So I got my hat on, and for some reason, I don't seem as neurotic. It would seem somebody's adjusted the attenuation on the grid. And unfortunately, that grid is not in the United States, is it? See, I was reading this book a short time ago, and it discussed confirmed information I already had received on the internet that December 2nd was the date of an agreement involving Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom. And I confirmed with some books regarding information about the political prisoners. I found out something very, very disturbing about those who might have been political prisoners that were anticipating release. And I said, you know what? After December 2nd, they have no more hold on me. I would never, as an adult, have agreed to acknowledge any peace agreement that was allowed to be brokered with a misrepresentation that my country or my people would have accepted the leadership of people that intentionally speculated on the sexualities of children as a means by which to engage illicit finance that was aimed at normalization of drug trafficking and prostitution as a form of undermining an official governmental structure and allowing their gangster friends to take priority when it came to domestic or international policy. Somehow I knew this when I was 18 and I was at college and I had been elected to the student government and a political issue was presented. And after discussing it with my colleagues, I made my own case before the student council, and the student council agreed with me. And now I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Now I'm supposed to get to neurotic again. I'm not supposed to focus on this document I just found when I was trying to confirm a date that is talking about some kind of grid, some energy grid in Northern Ireland. See, my people are from the South, but somebody swapped me to the North because in Texas, in the comptroller code, they have this disgusting, horribly racist, anti Irish hate crime about equal opportunity regarding employment and opportunities associated with Northern Ireland, which makes me understand that they like to play the slutty Catholic schoolgirl caught on the north side game where if you don't provide the service requirements they say you're supposed to in order to fulfill whatever the expectations are, then they're going to do something really horrible and Irish to you, like give you a tenner if you're really, really bad. Or if you're not too bad, they just might knock out one kneecap, but they might knock out both kneecaps. Or they might break your ankle, especially if they got some friends that are Democrats and they've passed some sort of tax waiver bill or something having to do with executive clawback provisions, and that they've deemed that your father or your grandfather was somehow connected to one of those scandals they've already busted. So they've already set those options up years and years and years ago, and you chances are meet a at least phenotype that fits into some sort of demographic experience indicator that they can then use as some sort of restitution or at least like some sort of temporary stopgap measure in order to get some sort of betterment accounting requirement, which I just learned about betterment accounting. So I'm not going to pretend to be an official on it. And to be honest with you, I'm not even really ready to give my report on that. But I'm just stunned because I thought that energy grid they were trying to set up on trying to force me into acts of prostitution in Houston was actually for Texas. But it turns out that what I've been tracking for the last year is what I understand to be significant and serious, serious bond fraud involving the Central Bank of Ireland. And I keep wondering, well, how functionally speaking has that been operationalized? I thought it had to do with FEMA and actually through the floodplain insurance when they had to do some sort of refinancing for the floodplain insurance program in 2018. Remember when they took out all those bonds that went through that Irish bank? And I was like, why are they setting up bonds connected to the federal flood insurance program on a bank in Ireland? Didn't make any sense at the time. But, I was a hobo in Houston and I knew that they used me for some sort of energy grid. I just didn't think it would end up actually being an energy grid that is in Ireland and Northern Ireland and somehow was brokered last year. They literally brokered this after they kidnapped me and after they set up that energy grid deal in Houston on me and after they stole my certificates in non-destructive testing and used them for a whole bunch of stuff I would never have agreed to that is actually not only incredibly illegal but sexually extortionate. And they covered up all the investigations and they stole all of my legal filings and they did a whole bunch of other really, really bad things. But as scandalous as that is, this scandal, I just found out about this right now. This wasn't even the scandal that I was trying to actually even address right now. I'm, oh my God, what's the scandal I was trying to address? Oh yeah, that motion I submitted. See, in late November 17, October of 2017, I had to submit this motion. It was called a motion to prevent conflict of interest. I don't even know if that's really a motion. I kind of just made it up, but then again, I didn't because I already knew that they had done all of these changes regarding declarations of potential conflicts of interest related to boards of directors for organizations as part of legal changes that happen in association with what I was alleging was actually the outroll of the digital economy that was being masked as if it was healthcare in order to dispossess people of their personal private property and to put them into processes of being cybernetically enhanced in order to be made commercially viable, but without obtaining their informed consent because the intent was to make sure that they weren't going to demand that they be compensated adequately and or appropriately evaluated so that whatever commercial role that they had was attributed to them and wasn't allowed to be given to somebody else who for whatever reason thought that they had some claim or some sort of title. And that's one of the major problems we have with mental health care is because a lot of what we call mental health care is really an intent to defraud people of their private intangible property either for R&D or to allow somebody else to be a representative of their estate so somebody can claim it for their own personal use up to and including their role in election processes that are supposed to lead to political office where they actually impact legislation and not just that but are also in charge of tax policy as well as appropriations. So I mean all of that I know is really significant, but in the course of that somehow I presented this motion for prevention of conflict of interest that said that, hey, you guys assigned this case to a judge who has this name, but you got to understand that part of the charges involved in this case involves somebody else that has the same name. And not only does somebody else have the same name, but my understanding is that I was actually trafficked in connection with that person with that name and what was going on with him as part of a kickback concerning somebody who was a lawyer with the same name from when I was a kid. And, I understand if you, for whatever reason, determine that it's appropriate to send me to this judge, you need to understand that this name reference as part of the pattern of racketeering I'm talking about actually could potentially present a conflict of interest unless there's an exclusion, an express intended exclusion in order to prevent against that conflict of interest being able to be manipulated or used, including in derivative processes, which I now understand, especially if you're dealing with small businesses or if you're dealing with LLCs, need to be disclosed in advance and agreed to at least 90 days before they're engaged. Otherwise, it's an illegal derivative litigious process. But they violate the derivative litigation rules all the time. And unlike other countries, which I won't mention right now, in case somebody wants to say that they're sanctioned, they don't actually disclose the specific rules about what it means to engage in, and they don't provide an appropriate parameters around engaging in derivative litigious processes. Oh my God. I got this book today, just today. I got it before 5 p.m. As a matter of fact, I picked it up before 1 p.m., which is when I scheduled it. But when I went to get the book, I only went to get one book. But then they gave me these extra books that I'd already ordered, but they hadn't told me they were available until today, right? And I just opened this book. And I didn't know this when I got the book. I knew the book was supposed to be about this Ponzi scheme, right? It was supposed to have something to do with a Ponzi scheme, but I didn't know anything. I was like, well, I don't really know, functionally speaking, what Ponzi schemes are. I probably should learn. I swear to God. Oh, they have pictures here. The Bennetts. Left to right, Bud, Kathleen, Patrick, and Michael inspect renovations to the atrium. I don't think they were actually inspectors, were they? They weren't actually qualified to be inspectors. They didn't actually go and get technical training in order to qualify to be an inspector of industrial materials, did they? Did they get kidnapped so that 10 days worth of derivatives could be hooked up on them through fraudulent billings for medical treatment? With the intent of sabotaging them and the other people they were training with as part of a kickback scheme in order to flip what apparently is the largest Ponzi scheme in American history? I've only looked at a few pages, gentlemen and ladies. The dates are that fucking precise. Going all the way back to November of 1977. I was 6 months old. Locations, they're that precise as well. You did literally traffic me my whole fucking life with the intention of offering me as a retirement bonus to one of your loyalists, who it now appears was aiding and abetting a global bond fraud scam that involves trafficking children, including for over 25 years. Over 35 years. You started hooking me up in this kickback scheme over 35 years ago. What are you going to do? This is more than a conflict of interest. You raped me. You raped everybody I was in that class with. And the problem is, you may well have raped the people that I worked with before in public health, but they have been conveniently able to recharacterize themselves as somehow qualified for some form of a national security role that is completely sabotaged. I've watched for years while it was intentionally sabotaged, while people that actually had practical experience in those regards were tortured and attempted for extortion and or enticement into agreeing to cede the prostitution just to get their basic needs met. And now in order for me to attempt to move forward on a job in a sector connected to industrial inspection, I would have to accept a recapitulation of the standards for personnel involved in training that basically renders me completely irrelevant when it comes to the financialization or the financial considerations involved. I'm supposed to be broke and poor and brilliant, but disturbed and trafficked for the rest of my fucking life as somebody else's retirement bonus. How many other women and men did you intentionally steal their lives and destinies from and mischaracterize them after you tortured them as having some sort of medical condition so that you can run them on very high profile processes in terms of working scenarios and processing information that you intend to give to people that were loyal to a political agenda that requires prostitution as a demonstration of loyalty? It's a very, very direct question, and it speaks to allegations of treason. I'm going to read this book. I'm going to file charges. I don't want to hear a goddamn fucking word about how I'm not a criminal lawyer or I'm not on any bar association, because I still contend and stand behind my contention that the State Bar of Texas is actually a communist organization. It's not a parody of a communist organization. It's actually, literally, a communist organization seeking to violently overthrow the American government and enslave the people of the United States to a bunch of perverts